Game 3, Bruins and Blues. Series is tied at 1 as it shifts to St. Louis. And big story coming into this game is, what will Boston's top line do? The perfection line. It's been their worst line so far in the Stanley Cup final. And a big reason why is the difficulty that line has had against the St. Louis Blues top line centered by Brayden Schenn. Now, Craig Berube will have last change here with the series shifting to St. Louis, so he'll be able to dictate this matchup, and you have to think he'll be going with Schenn versus Bergeron based on what we've seen so far in the first 2 games. Just over 6 minutes of head-to-head action at 5-on-5. Slot shots dominated by St. Louis, and they've outscored the Bergeron line 3-0 while they've been on the ice together. It got so bad, in fact, that Bruce Cassidy switched Pastrnak off this line in Game 2, so Cassidy can do that again if he wants in this game, but he won't be able to dictate the matchup. Will be interesting to see if that St. Louis top line can continue to control play against the Bergeron line here in Game 3. Now, looking at how these teams have created their offense so far in the series, the neutral zone I still think is where this series is going to be won and lost. You take a look at what St. Louis did in Game 1 compared to Game 2. They were forced to dump the puck in a lot in Game 1. They generated almost next to nothing off the rush. They didn't score off the rush. Game 2, they figured out how to create some speed through the neutral zone and give Boston problems there. Tarasenko ends up scoring off the rush on that rebound play. They didn't dump it in nearly as much, and they created 8 chances off the rush, way more than in Game 1, so a big improvement for St. Louis there. Conversely, the Blues defended speed through the neutral zone much better. You take a look at Boston and their dump-in rate, how it went sky high in Game number 2 compared to Game 1. The chances went down, and after scoring 2 goals off the rush in Game 1, Boston had nothing in Game 2. I thought St. Louis did a really good job of not allowing them to go wide with their speed and get the defense turned around. So that will be another area to watch here in Game 3, is which team can control the neutral zone. When you talk about creating off the rush, you're talking about Vladimir Tarasenko. He's one of the best in the NHL, and he's been one of the best in the playoffs so far. He has almost twice as many scoring chances off the rush as any of his teammates. He's second overall in the playoffs. The only guy ahead of him, this is crazy, is Nathan MacKinnon, who hasn't played since the second round. That's how good Nathan MacKinnon, though, was in the postseason. So keep an eye on Vladimir Tarasenko whipping through the neutral zone and getting some good looks with speed. He's one of the best in the National Hockey League. Now we'll talk about the goaltending matchup. A couple of interesting trends here. TUUKKA RASK, he's allowed 5 goals, so has Binnington. 4 have come high blocker. Now, coming into the Stanley Cup final, Rask had allowed more goals high blocker than anywhere else. But I'm not prepared to say this is a weakness for him. When you look at where he allows his goals in the net relative to league average, the blocker is right around league average for him, even though we've seen a spike here in the Stanley Cup final. Something to watch, though. I will say that Jordan Binnington has a weakness, and that is 5-hole. He's allowed a couple goals already there in the Cup final. And again, when you look at the relative to where he's allowed the rest of his goals in the net, he's about twice as bad 5-hole as league average. Over 20% of the goals he's allowed have been 5-hole, league average right around 12%. So that's an area to watch for Binnington, and the reason why is a lot of plays on shots from the slot that are preceded by a pass to the slot. So pre-shot movement is something that he's struggled with so far in these playoffs. TUUKKA RASK is not. He's been great. Save percentage well over 900. Jordan Binnington, 742 save percentage on shots from the slot that are preceded by a pass. So that's when it gets him to move in the net. 4 out of the 5 goals that Boston has scored against him in the Stanley Cup final have been passes into the slot and shots from the slot. An area he struggled, again, something to watch for here in Game 3 is that goaltending battle, and specifically with Binnington, what I just talked about. So lots of great storylines heading into Game 3. We hope you enjoy it, and be sure to stay tuned to our social media channels on Twitter @ThePointHockey, where we will have graphics and animations during every period and intermission breakdowns as well.